is the rest of the world going to follow the US this way, or will they go their own way? I mean, are we going to see a sort of split where there is almost a sort of argument about wokeism or virtue signalling happening in the US, but over in the rest of the world we move forward, or are we in danger of losing momentum everywhere else as well? And I want to start with you with that one, Anna.
Yes, so I think that's a very interesting question, and I also think this is an interesting observation, that are you building from the ground, which is probably a more sustainable solution to make sure that you're grooming and nurturing. And I do agree that women have a responsibility to help women. There was a time when I think women felt very intimidated to help women when there were so few women, and then it became kind of a very vicious cycle around that. So grooming from the beginning, sponsors, mentors, providing support during different times in one's career, and making sure that just because you do a lateral move for a couple of years doesn't mean you can't get back in. And that's where I think career planning and making sure we understand that it's kind of a two-way street. Organization, companies have to help. The staff member or the person themselves has to also sort of feel where do they want to go, and I find many women I mentor often sort of say, oh, I don't know, I'm not thinking about my career. And I always say, please do. I was in your shoes once, and I kind of said the same thing. And it was other people thinking of my career. And then I realized, actually, I have to think about my career. So I think that's a very good point. I do think that it is different in different settings, though. The world that I work in has much more fundamental issues, and maybe that's why they feel 2015. Because we are looking at just social norms that are very, very hard to crack and to change. Or we're looking for just such inequality that it's very, very fundamental that we work on those before we can see what we need to see. Under our gender strategy, there's a sixth focus area that we're still working on. And we haven't been able to exactly articulate what it's going to focus and be about. And it's actually to develop female leadership in the developing world. And I think this is very interesting because we're doing a lot of consultations around this, and we're getting a lot of really interesting input. But it's clear that there's no one track that you can use. So I think we need to continue to focus on this. We need to always come back to the fact that it's not why, it's the how. And we need to keep learning from good examples, but also recognizing that different settings require also a little bit of understanding of local context, because if we lose that, I think you cannot just fly in solutions. I also find that's not helpful. But I think it's inspiring to hear companies or countries that say we didn't have to do much, it just happened. Well, why did it just happen? Because the evidence was there. All of a sudden, the decisions were better, profitability went up, shareholder value. What happened? How did that happen? And then you go back and look. So not a very straight answer, except to say, let's learn from each other and let's not abandon this topic. We will have to probably come back to it because it's not going to be fixed overnight.
Oh, I look forward to next WEF. We do have time to ask some audience questions. So just an ask from our audience, if you have a question, to please raise your hand and we can get those in. Before we get to that, though, I'm turning back to you, Catherine. Do you think we'll see a divergence between the West or the US and populous countries, that there is this backlash from the rest of the world? Is that an opportunity, perhaps?
Well, I get out of bed every morning thinking I'm an optimist. So I have to say I think it's a massive opportunity. What's been quite interesting, actually, about the broader sort of ESG debate, which is something that I'm deeply passionate about from an investing perspective, and the conversations I've been having this week, particularly in light of the inauguration yesterday and you know, quick fire things that got done last night. I don't think the castle on the hill has moved, but I think what's moving is the how and the where. And that's what I'm hearing. And that in itself provides a real opportunity for parts of the world. Is it going to be a sort of an East versus West thing? I mean, I would say this, but I see it every day. The opportunity in the Gulf region is massive. There's a hugely young population, Female empowerment is a huge economic imperative. It's driven right from the top down. It's really exciting. And I can tell you, having been going to Saudi Arabia for 7 years ago, you really didn't see many women in positions of authority, or really at all. And now, almost the first person you see stamping your passport is a brilliantly smiling young female Saudi saying, "Welcome to Saudi Arabia." And so I think that what's actually going to perhaps limit some of the issues in the US will be something that developing, emerging, forward-looking economies and countries are going to grab with both hands and run really hard. And that will mean that the flow of capital to some of those countries is also going to follow.
Fun fact, I'm actually trying to get a football match between the Saudi and the Bangladesh team.
Let's see who
True
wins.
story.
Okay, that's a plea. Can we please get the Saudis to play the Bangladesh in football? That's what we're going to get out of this
In
panel.
Bangladesh.
I'm turning to the audience now. Do we have any questions? Okay, if not, I have.
There's one over there.
Here we go. Do we have microphones?
That's one there.
There we go. If you could please state your name too and the representation.
Thank you. My name is Claudia Valladares. I'm from Venezuela, and I'm part of the Social Innovators from Schwab Foundation. I agree with everything that you have said, but despite everything, the numbers, the statistics, the reality, the rationals, human on economics too, there's still a lot of people against, well, at least in my opinion or in my personal experience, mainly men that are against this type of gender parity when it's associated with political arguments that many governments has been used. So it gets into the politics of the polarization of both sides, and when some of them, these extremes, take it as a flag to regulate, probably exaggerating some things or using language that are not very inviting everyone, of being inclusive, all of this fight starts. What would you have to say in order to try to fight that type of, battles are empty?
I think if we're answering that question, it's almost as if what toolbox do companies need, or leaders of companies, or leaders of government, or anyone building their own business to define why gender parity is so important, regardless of the politics? Like, what do we need to do to empower people with the language they need to describe that, the why? Again, going back to what you said, Catherine. I mean, when you speak to leaders, to people who want to start their companies, what are the words that you give them that are not about the morality, but about what it'll do to their business?
I mean, I think it's dangerous when it gets taken on a political journey, because that is often very emotive and it ends up in a bad place. I'm a great believer in do it and prove it rather than shout about it. And I think if there was more of that attitude, so just prove it by example and demonstrate that it works. And you can crowd in the best talent. I mean, it is such a magnetic drive of talent into your organization. And I think to your point about, is it the pipeline at the bottom? Is it the sort of drive from the top? You have to have both. It's not an either or, it's an and. And if you get that and, you get a massively powerful example. But, there are some people that honestly just were born skeptical. So let's not be one of those.
Lutfi, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just want to say that, so as you said, when it's polarized, it's polarized. You can't have a rational argument. The antidote to virtue signaling is not no signaling, it's credible signaling. People just have to be sincere about what they do, and everyone needs to have their own theory of change within a company, at a country level. So if people feel that DEI is the wrong way to go, well, what is your alternative theory of change? And maybe we can learn some from that alternative. But to throw the baby with the bathwater, to say that because it was done, in a tokenistic way, in that instance, I'm going to give up on that altogether, that is a silly way to go.
Follow up on that. Are you optimistic enough to believe that there is an alternative route of change coming from some of the people that are saying DEI is not the way to go? I guess. Yeah, that's for you.
Yeah, I think it became toxic, as has ESG. And there are some wrong reasons for that and some right reasons for that. But I'm more interested in what is effective. How do we get to the result as opposed to the label?
Michael, are the companies you're speaking to saying the same thing?
Yeah, I would be also more optimistic than I understood your question with regards to the political noise we hear. And I just, from the first 2 days here in Davos again, I hear many leaders saying something like, politics are short-term, we need to think long-term. And the business of business is business. So what helps business to succeed? There's a lack of talent. There's the acknowledgement of diversity creates better outcome, even more so in a world that is identified, without any doubt, as increasingly complex. And the answer for complexity is not a logical answer. It's creating more diversity of perspective. It's more trial and error. It's more pioneering and then correcting. This comes with a culture of forgiving mistakes that needs creating psychological safety. I think that concept has arrived at the ExCos and at board level. Even there might be a tone here or a tone there that sounds like we had enough of regulation. But that doesn't mean you stop doing smart things. And without overstretching my answer, I have the feeling that we are talking about the same effect if it comes to diversity as we see it on sustainability. It's less so about being politically correct, but to do the right thing. To save energy is a cost factor. It's a competitive advantage. And the same is with diversity. You don't need loud commitments. You need to do the right things. And I think I heard a lot of leaders saying, come on, what we hear currently from a couple of governments and what there is the noise of some opportunistic anti-woke representatives here and there does not keep us away from doing, I repeat it, the right thing.
We have a question here.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Shanti here. I'm a Schwab social innovator like her. I just want to brainstorm with you here because of what I'm hearing. I want to bring, by the way, disability inclusion into this because I work on livelihoods for people with disability, and we've had women with disability becoming leaders, so that's great. What we've seen, we did some disruption. I mean, it just happened that we worked with blind women and made them medical tactile examiners doing breast cancer detection for women.
Oh, wow.
And I can't tell you, I'm getting goosebumps when I'm saying this. It became like a women's empowerment for the lady who's getting this done for two reasons. One is because that means you are important. Because when you are healthy, your family also, I mean, sometimes you're discarded otherwise, you know, like a waste, whatever, cloth. The second is, oh, if she can do this, what am I doing with my life? So I'm just wondering, I want to brainstorm. I think, should we be doing these kind of disruptions? I must give you another example. There was a toll booth in Bangalore, a very odd, you know, very far away place, looked very unsafe. And not Bangalore, it was Chennai, somewhere in the border. And because we had a women leader leading at that time in the politics, suddenly all the toll booths have women, and suddenly we felt the place was safe. Are you?
Yep.
And now I'm seeing all across Karnataka, women in the toll booths. They didn't exist before. So I'm just wondering, I know this sounds a little strange, but what can we do about this?
I think it proves your point of prove the case rather than talk the case, right? We go out there and we do these things, and how do we expand on that? And for the World Bank, how do you take all these micro ways of doing things and expand on them so they become the way it's done in the world, I guess? We'll start with you, Anna.
Yeah, no, this is very interesting to me. And we've also done studies to see, you know, sometimes just simple perception surveys to see, would you go into a market if, and then you describe the situation. And it's amazing how both men and women at almost any age group will have a bias towards, if there's a female guard, I might actually feel more comfortable than not, or if there's stalls with women, you know. So it is very, very interesting. I also like your focus on inclusion more broadly, because I think that's also very important, and that's something that we also see that we need to accommodate for. It's better to build it in from the beginning than to try to adjust and accommodate later on. So I really like that. But I think, you know, it's really on us to think those issues through. For us, we have a mission statement that says end poverty on a livable planet. And it's really broad, but it's really important. And that livable planet, a lot of people think we added livable planet for climate. We did, but we really mean so many more things. It's being able to breathe clean air. That's a livable planet. It's being able to access basic services. That's a livable planet. So this issue of gender equality, inclusion, ensuring that people who have a disability have exactly the same opportunity is really important for us. Otherwise, we can't meet our mission. Now, that may sound a bit idealistic, but that's, we are the World Bank Group, and we believe in development and inclusive development for all. So we're going to keep pushing it. I love the examples because I use those very much to also inspire trust and also ambition, frankly. If others can do it, maybe you can do it.
And Lutfi, you were going to jump in, but I just want to make sure we are trying to say it's not going to be good enough if only white women have top jobs. Only, you know, it's only the Western world. So this inclusion part and making sure that, you know, we can, is that where we're headed to, right? And can we do it? Catherine and Lutfi, like, how does inclusion inform making gender parity stronger, I guess, and less likely to attacks?
You go.
I wanted to combine it also with a bit of a policy perspective. So it's going to get tougher because technology, and I know AI is a big part of what we're dealing with right here. So if you take in Bangladesh, one of the success stories for gender empowerment was the ready-made garments industry. Women were working in there. And then you have now a phase where volumes and revenues multiply, but the number of workers remains stagnant overall and the number of women are down. There's been a defeminization of that workforce. And I don't know with AI if that's going to get exacerbated or not. So the policy challenge will only get worse. And I think we need to really combine this with the skills agenda and the funding agenda that's targeted at women. And I go back to, for example, the Grameen Bank and the microfinance project that Professor Yunus and others had worked on, which have clearly demonstrated that you get better household financing through women.
That's great. And Catherine, just last word to you, because we have a very special guest who's going to come up onto the stage to give us some takeaways from this panel. So last word to you, Catherine, like, how do we ensure inclusion is part of that equation?
Well, I think actually I would segue straight to Celia, because I think she's going to have the answer as to what we should do next.
Yes.
This is Celia from the World Economic Forum. So we walk away from this with things we can actually do for everyone in the room and watching right now.
Thank you so much, Leila, and thank you so much to our panelists for this really, really engaging and enriching conversation. I think there are a few points that stand out here. First one is the economic gender gap is real, it's very big, and we're making very slow progress in terms of closing it. So any way that you cut the data, you'll find a gender gap, whether it's in labor force participation, informal employment, senior leadership, the pay gap, VC capital, wealth, all of it. In looking towards how to close this economic gap, yes, so we have to continue looking at what we can do in terms of the workforce, and so labor markets will stay important. But at the same time, we need to broaden the view as well to look at what can we do in terms of capital markets, and what can we do in terms of innovation ecosystems to make sure that women have a much richer opportunities in terms of economic participation. And as Lutfi was saying, we need to do all of this in, going beyond the tokenism and doing this in spaces where we can have real and sincere conversations about what works and what doesn't work. And as we said, I mean, the good thing is that all of this adds up to better growth. We talked about the reframe, and as the panelists said, I think the business case has been made many times, and in the gender space is often an argument. But I feel when it comes to, we're all looking for new ways of generating growth, of catalyzing new growth and getting better growth. And I feel like in those spaces, gender parity is not often offered as a solution. So maybe this is also something that we can take into other spaces, into the macro conversations. Now, at the World Economic Forum, we've launched the Global Gender Parity Sprint to 2030. So this is 5 years of acceleration towards gender parity, of course, on a multi-stakeholder platform with all the partners that we usually engage with. And in 2025, we will continue to tackle the traditional gaps in the workforce that have been long-standing, but we're also hoping to push out the frontier in terms of the gender parity in capital markets, looking at what does it look like to embed gender parity in the tech transition, what does it look like in the green transition. And we very much hope that we can work with many, many of you, and very grateful, of course, for the collaborations that are already ongoing with many of you who are represented on the panel. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Sylvia. Let's not be back here in 2030 saying, why are we still talking about this?
Please not.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I didn't get a chance to ask a question.
Thank you very much. Very insightful.
SEBA, the Self-Employed Women's
Yeah.
Association.
We have to go.
Life depends on movement. We have seasonal migration. In an effort to restrict migration northwards, seasonal migration was stifled. So it became a life and death situation. And then there are certain actors there that are irredentist. They were empowered. And such irredentist groups clearly come into conflict with people that have been trained all their adult lives to protect the integrity of their countries, soldiers. So this is part of the reason why we're having to contend with unconstitutional changes of government. So you can see how, and then of course the weapons pouring in from Libya, fighters, then we've got Sudan to contend with, and so it goes. So there's a need